I don't see what's so terrible about a bean.
This is the great white bean. The bean that took my father.
Right now, the world of animation is kind of sparse, all things considered. There are definitely new shows and movies coming out, things like Nimona, but other than that, most things have fallen into one of two categories. There are shows or movies like Teenage Kraken that haven't made much of a splash at all, or reboots and continuations. Recently I talked about Futurama, Fiona and Cake is the big thing this week. Even Spider-Verse, technically speaking, falls into this category. And it looks to be that way going into the foreseeable future, where the biggest show on the horizon is more Phineas and Ferb. Again. It says something when the most talked about show of the year is yet another Scooby-Doo reboot, or a SpongeBob spin-off talking about the Nostalgia Critic. I don't know if I'd call 2023 a bad year for animation, but it's definitely a sparse one.
Like, I'm talking sparse. I'm talking done sparse.
I myself have been getting kind of antsy looking for the next true new hit, but with current events, it's looking like things might be dour for quite some time. In times like this, what I like to do is delve into the backlog. Animation history is going to be pretty big, and even since the turn of the millennia, there are a ton of shows that most people missed out on. This is a perfect opportunity for catching up on that gem that everyone talked about a decade or more ago, like Regular Show, Avatar, Ren and Stimpy. But what do you do when you've already watched the big ones? Well, you start looking for some of the hidden gems, those shows that could go toe-to-toe with the big ones, but most people missed out on them for whatever reasons. Today, that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be talking about 4 of the greatest, and dare I even say, most insane Western cartoons ever released that next to no one saw. There really isn't going to be any criteria for this video. By coincidence, all of these come after the year 2000, but the real rule here is I will defend each of these shows to my grave, and I know no one else who has actually seen them. And if you've seen the thumbnail, you're probably curious about at least one or more of them.
Hey, you should have said something!
Said something? What would have been the point? You do not belong to a culture which listens!
We'll start with Lloyd in Space, because this is a very strange one. I watched this show quite a bit as a kid, and I remembered it being just okay. One of those very middle-of-the-road shows. And I think that's what everyone else believes and even believed back then. While it technically lasted for 4 seasons, it didn't even make 40 episodes. People generally remember it as Recess in Space! After all, it does have a lot of the same show staff. Lloyd himself is even voiced by the same person who voices Gus.
Today, Lloyd P. Nebulon turns 13 years old.
The only episode that people do seem to remember is a very oddly resonant one, Neither Boy Nor Girl, which I took a look at earlier this year, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. Rewatching this show for that review though, I came to a very interesting conclusion. I'm just gonna come out and say it. Lloyd in Space is one of the best cartoons of the 2000s. Like, top 10 good. Not Avatar, not Samurai Jack, but it is almost embarrassing how high I'd put Lloyd in Space. How could I not? The title sequence literally has Lloyd committing murder. He breaks a window on a space station, and while some species of alien can certainly breathe in space, they're just shot out into the vacuum. And the first episode doesn't slow down on that note either. It's about Lloyd turning 13, and like any other 13-year-old, he partakes in underage gambling, crashes a police car, and blows up a fucking power station. The episode does give one line about how the power plant was currently empty, but for a while you're thinking that Lloyd did some pretty serious damage.
Lunch money for 1 full week, gone. Gambled away to a what?
To a toaster, Mom.
I want to talk about what this show does really well though, because from the outset, it does look like your typical cartoon sitcom. Lloyd Nebulon is an alien trying to survive middle school on a space station with his friends Crazy Hair, Pinky, and the Brain. He's got a single mom because this is a Disney cartoon, and a bratty little sister because this is a Disney cartoon. Like I said, it looks like the typical sitcom, just in space. Let's start with Lloyd's little sister, Francine. We've seen plenty of bratty little siblings in animation, and from the clips, she probably does give very DW vibes. Whiny and domineering. But the twist here is that she has psychic powers, namely mind reading and telekinesis. And let's just say that makes her temper tantrums much more interesting to watch. She's also quite intelligent despite her age. She may give off some Stewie Griffin vibes, but in reality she's not evil, just mischievous, like an actual little kid. But here's the magic that sets Lloyd in Space apart from other shows. It actually knows when Francine is behaving badly. As far as I can tell, there's never an Arthur's Big Hit moment, where Francine is causing trouble and her mother just decides to look the other way, or the show itself pretends that she did nothing wrong. Whenever the focus is on her, she does tend to get the consequences for what she's done. One episode is all about her losing her psychic powers.
Can you bend the spoon? Of course, I meant with your brainwaves.
I love this. In this episode, Lloyd gets plenty of payback, because unlike say with DW or several other bratty younger siblings, there's a constant back and forth. It leads to bickering, but the show itself does not pick sides, which puts it a leg up above so many others. It also helps that the mother Nora is fucking amazing.
Don't do it, Mom! You'll kill him!
That's the idea, Lloyd. Now get back!
So, she's the commander of the space station that Lloyd and his friends live on, and she's usually stern and authoritarian, which probably makes some people groan these days. But like everything else that Lloyd in Space does, it goes to infinity and beyond. So, in one episode, Lloyd and his friends get threatened by space pirates.
Your heartfelt plea for mercy touches me. Destroying a ship full of helpless children is going to be even more enjoyable than I had imagined.
Nora goes out to save them. She does this by threatening to blow herself up and threatening to take them all with her. It was a bluff, but like, the show is constantly doing things like this. Like, just drop this darker background. Like, occasionally they'll just drop that World War IX has happened and that Lloyd's grandfather was a veteran in said war. Nora also has a very human side too. They do explore her being a single mother. One of the episodes is about her trying to go on a date with a new guy, Lloyd being jealous of it, and exploring that aspect of her character. That's one of the big things that I love here. No major character is one note. I also love that this is the funniest goddamn show that I've ever seen. In one episode, Francine runs away and Lloyd finds her ribbon in the water. And then we get this scene.
Is it hers?
No, it ain't hers. It's mine. Sheesh. Last time I go skinny dipping in that pool.
Good galaxies, man. Put some clothes on.
This is a Disney show. And in the episode about puberty, Lloyd's fantasies keep projecting themselves out in the world and embarrassing him. And try as he might, he cannot control them. Yes, it is a metaphor for exactly what you think it is.
What did you say? I said, hello, pretty lockers. I just happen to think these lockers are very attractive.
Eddie invents the internet.
Hi, wanna dance? Half girl, half zebra? What the heck?
Also, this is like the one cartoon in history that does a body swap episode where the voices don't also switch, so we actually have Lloyd's voice actor acting like Francine and vice versa. And this episode is the perfect example of why it's such a pet peeve of mine, because when you do it like this, it makes it so much funnier.
Mister, can I take my nappy now? I had to run laps and I'm real tired and I want to take my nappy.
Like, seriously guys, I have no idea what happened. I don't know if it's just the comedy went over my head when I was a kid or I was just asleep all the time, but at some point, Lloyd in Space became amazing. It's out of this world. Don't pardon the pun, because fuck you, the show is awesome.
From the tip of the nose to the behind, they're the protectors of the city of Hector.
Probably the most famous of the cartoons we're going to be talking about today is Ozzy and Drix, the spin-off of the hybrid live-action gross-out / animated cop film Osmosis Jones. The movie, if you're wondering, holds up alright. The animated and live-action segments don't really blend together. They're totally different tonally. As for the animated segments, the premise is the twist. It plays it as close to your typical cop movie as possible, with the only real difference being that it takes place in the human body. They're able to have some neat ideas, admittedly, and it does have a sense of humor. But if you remember for anything, it's the villain Thrax. This guy is one of the best non-Disney villains in all of animation, just his attitude, how in control he is, and his overall plan. It was certainly an interesting choice making a spin-off series of this particular movie, because if I recall correctly, it wasn't very well liked at the time. What you heard mostly was people complaining about a half live-action movie being played on the Cartoon Network. Oh, how naive we all were. And its tone was a little bit more adult than you'd expect from your typical kids' cartoon. Then again, they also gave RoboCop a cartoon. Yes, RoboCop, I heard you the first time. Ozzy and Drix has the same basic idea as the movie. It's a detective show taking place in the human body, with a tough and jaded Osmosis Jones and his partner, the literal and figurative pill, Drix, trying to track down and stop deadly viruses before they can cause real damage. The one key difference is that this time our main characters are sucked up by a mosquito and transplanted into the 13-year-old Hector. So they have to fight the health problems and developments that a typical 13-year-old boy might. Acne, lice, eating too much sugar, and puberty. One of the more interesting things about Ozzy and Drix is that it has the rare distinction of being an educational show, but not aimed at little kids. That might make it sound boring off the cuff, but no. This show is quite the interesting experience, because Hector nearly fucking dies in every single episode. No, I'm not exaggerating. The show starts with scarlet fever, he nearly drowns to death in the opening of season 2, almost dies of hypothermia, almost has his appendix rupture in the woods away from cell signals, crashes his skateboard and gets a concussion. Oh, and in one episode, the villain is trying to create tumors. Hector has some, like, Eugene from Hey Arnold luck.
Whoops! I'm okay.
In the episode about bad fucking dreams, he nearly gets hit by a truck. As for the educational aspect itself, it's okay. It's usually pretty basic stuff. If you don't brush your teeth, you'll get French general bacteria trying to mine them for sugar. If you eat nothing but junk food, beatnik bacteria will try to clog your arteries. But it's okay because exercising one time will save you. It has to wrap up these lifelong health problems in about half an hour after all. The show does end up relying on a scare 'em straight approach. Like I said, Hector really dies of hypothermia because he made the stupid decision to go down a closed snow trail. So, kids, don't do that. They also go into ghastly detail of what a parasitic worm could do.
Chewing every muscle they can find, even the heart. But the worst is when they get into the eyes.
For what it's worth, most of the information is accurate, and sometimes even important. Don't fall asleep if you got a concussion. That being said, if you remember anything at all from the show itself, it's probably that it spread the myth that toothpaste cures acne. From what I can tell, dermatologists say not to do that because it causes more damage in the long run. I'm not recommending the show because of its educational nature. I just think that the show itself really uses the full potential of the Osmosis Jones ideas. This is one of the best cop cartoons out there, right along the lines of Fillmore. And one of the big reasons for that is the characters. Osmosis Jones was fine in the movie, but let's be honest, it was just another Chris Rock performance. He's still straight-laced in the show, and definitely the more cynical one, but they dropped most of his hard-boiled, jaded nature. He has a sense of humor, which is good, because as the straight man, he tends to get the best jokes in the series. Which reminds me, the show is actually pretty funny. On the other hand, you have Drix. In the movie, he was just the do-it-by-the-book officer. Kinda boring, really. In the show, well, he's a huge dork, and I kinda love it how he gets excited over really stupid things.
Look! Up in the sky! It's a bird! It's a plane!
It's a lump of cereal, okay?
He's still the one into the more procedural aspect of the investigations, but the show lets his personality shine through. However, the best part of the show is clearly the villains. Unlike most cop shows, the villains here have things akin to superpowers. Scarlet Fever, like Thrax, makes everything hot. Hypothermia Girl has ice powers. The parasitic worms are parasitic worms. But I think everyone's favorite villain was Nicotine from the smoking episode. He has a lot of that Thrax energy, and is voiced by Tim Curry, and he even gets a song too.
Hello there, hi, I'm new to this place. Please don't be alarmed by my oily embrace.
A lot of people call the smoking episode the show's very special episode, but honestly, it totally fits in with everything else in the show. Like I said, almost every episode is about Hector almost dying. If I had to complain about anything, the show does get a little gross sometimes. It takes place in the human body after all, and that does include places like the bladder. Characters at least talk about eating snot and mucus even if they never show it, and some of the actual bacteria can get pretty gross. Honestly though, it's a lot lighter than what the movie gave us, so I think I can give that aspect a pass.
Sir, we need a replacement. And fast!
Oh boy, what can I say about the replacements? When ads for the show started airing on the Disney Channel in 2007, I was actually very unimpressed. It was this show, of all things, that made my 15-year-old self think, yep, they're finally out of ideas. And I'm guessing that a lot of other people felt just the same, because this one didn't last too long. Either that or it got lost in the shuffle as the Disney Channel geared itself more and more to kidcoms, and stopped showing any animated series that wasn't Phineas and Ferb. The theme song didn't help matters.
Todd and Riley were both so sad. Then they came across a Fleamco ad.
It's not the worst thing ever. Definitely not like a candidate for the worst theme songs of all time, but it's the worst type of theme song. Bad, but absurdly catchy, so it sticks in your brain. So weeks later, you'll be like humming to yourself, Todd and Riley were both so sad, till they came across a Fleamco ad. I did eventually give the show a chance back then, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. I liked it. I thought it was fairly decent. So for this video, I decided to check it out again. And not only did I think that it held up, I think that it really held up. This one's actually pretty fucking good. Maybe not as good as the show that overshadowed it, but that's like comparing Fairly OddParents to SpongeBob SquarePants. So, what is that premise that I found oh so stupid? These two orphans, Todd and Riley, get special flip phones that they can use to replace anyone in their lives with someone else. For example, if their baseball coach doesn't care about winning, they can replace him with a Major League Baseball player.
Yes, I am the Buck Spikes, toughest player in the major leagues. Yes, I am the only player ever suspended for punching a mascot, but that mouthy walrus had it coming.
I love this show. One of the more surprising things on rewatch is how fluid the animation actually is. Like, this is some really high budget stuff. There's a lot of detail on each individual shot, and every character has this super fluid motion that really does help with the character acting. It's a noticeable upgrade compared to anything else that was airing at the time. Honestly, it's hard to remember why the premise rubbed me so wrong. It's simply a different take in the long line of the wish fulfillment genre, giving kids some kind of crazy power like magical fairies or super science inventing powers, and watching them go crazy with it, and then needing to deal with the consequences of their decisions. If I did have one complaint, it's that this Disney show is very Disney.
But playing baseball isn't about winning and losing. It's about building our character to make us better adults.
Every episode is, like, very clearly about Todd and Riley learning about some kind of lesson that does get heavily spelled out, usually by their parents. On the flip side, Agent K and Dick Daring are, like, actually good parents. They do fall into that stereotypical sitcom mold. We have a very stupid father and the mother who is the only one with some kind of sense. Thankfully, though, we're more in the realm of Gumball than a Seth MacFarlane ripoff show. First of all, the mother is a super secret agent, and the father is a daredevil. That alone makes them better than your typical sitcom parents. But it's how they're used where the magic happens. The Replacements often gets compared to the Fairly Odd Parents. It's got a lot of the same show staff, to the point where Darren Norris plays the father in both shows.
This is where I'd put a trophy. If I had one! Now, son, if you reach the speed of sound, be sure to plug your ears for the sonic boom. Good luck!
And they are similar characters to be sure. Both are idiots, constantly getting to pain. But in the case of the Replacements, Dick Daring actually loves his kid, and every time that the Fairly Odd Parents isn't having a Channel Chaser's heartwarming moment, it's clear that Mr. Turner doesn't.
Oh, don't worry about it, Timmy. My dreams were shattered years ago.
How many years ago?
How old are you?
It actually seems that Dick Daring wants his kids to succeed. And while Agent K is definitely the wisest character on the show, she's not above getting in on some of the fun. She's a lot less stuffy than some of her counterparts. And when she is getting deep into giving advice, the characters aren't always enthused to hear about it.
Being a spy means always holding things in, always trying to separate the mom side from the spy side.
Dearest Mummy, sorry, the mom side spy side thing was running a little long. Love, Riley.
This one definitely deserved a lot better. But unlike some of the other shows we're talking about today, I can see why this one never really took off. The premise does sound like throwing everything at the wall at once, but beyond that, it was a cartoon on the Disney Channel in the late 2000s that wasn't Phineas and Ferb. That's basically a death wish.
When I was wee small, we'd pray for precipitation so there'd be rain soup for dinner.
Let me pitch this last cartoon to you. It's a sitcom about three friends living in an apartment, but there's no humans in their world. Instead, their world is inhabited by all manner of fairy tale and mythological creatures. We got fairies, centaurs, even Neptune, king of the sea. And unlike in, say, Onward, magic is integral to their world. Every single episode has something fantastical happening. Spells, curses, wishes being granted. Our main character is a leprechaun even, who is tasked with granting every single wish asked. One such wish was giving a puffin bird the ability to speak, who became his roommate. They're joined by the ghost of this snarky Japanese girl who haunts their apartment. She ends up being pretty cool though, and they're all pretty good friends. Sounds pretty cool, huh? So, you're probably wondering what it's called. So, before we continue, I'd like to say that this is not a joke, and no, I'm not trolling you. I swear on Akiko's grave that this is a good show, but I will give you absolutely full disclosure. Ironically or not, the title is why I watch the show, but for the same reason that Dork Hunters from Outer Space or the Invisible Network of Kids got me interested in watching their shows. Wish Fart sounded god-awful, but I actually watched it and it clicked with me. And as I kept watching, it really clicked with me. So let's get the elephant in the room. Who in Zeus's name calls their show Wish Fart? The story goes like this. It's a Wish of the Week affair where Dez is forced to grant any single wish asked of him by anyone, being a leprechaun. But they often go wrong, because he's not the best leprechaun in the world and has a quote-unquote wonky rainbow. And a wish going wrong is called a wish fart, kind of like a brain fart. That's where the title comes from. It's clever, or it would be if the show wasn't called Wish Fart. The episode titles aren't much better either. They all come from random one-off lines in the episode. And like, I mean random. Aw man, I wear this hat ironically. And we can't eat sand. Names are not this show's strong suit. The animation itself, I've also heard giving pause to people. If you've ever complained about Cal art style anytime in your life, well, you can tell the show was made in 2017, right? It at least looks like a show called Wish Fart. But I swear to you, there is much more to this one. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this might be one of my favorite cartoons of the 2010s. It's definitely my favorite in the Wish of the Week genre, because it fixes one glaring problem that Fairly Odd Parents was plagued by, especially in its later years. You know how every single episode of Fairly Odd Parents needs to come up with some stupid off-the-cuff rule or force a way for Cosmo and Wanda to lose their wands, so Timmy couldn't just wish his problem away? Here's how it works in Wishfart. Magic cannot be used to fix magic. That's it! You did it! You win the prize! You figured it out! Within the show, they repeatedly state that using a wish to fix a bad wish always makes it worse. And we even sometimes get to see that, yes, it actually does. So whenever magic causes a problem, the characters are forced to deal with it via their own ingenuity. This is another show that I really like by how it separates itself from most other shows. Dez is definitely the dorky, nerdy one of the group. Not the most physically strong, but he's always trying to help. Most leprechauns are in hiding because they don't want to grant wishes constantly. Dez is out in the open because he doesn't mind doing that. He does have a lot of irrational fears and things like that, but he's the most down-to-earth of the three. Akiko the Ghost is definitely self-assured and snarky, but she's not an asshole. She can be brutally honest, but not in a single episode do you ever get the impression that she's trying to actively be mean. And then there's Puffin. He's the more selfish one of the group, constantly into eating and definitely not the smartest. Which, might remind you of someone.
Patrick, that's my money.
Have you learned nothing about sharing?
But the magic here is that he's never an asshole to his friends. The worst thing he'll do is sneak a wish that Dez is forced to grant, but it usually ends up more badly for Puffin than anyone else. Every character on the show is like this. How many times have you seen this? Our main guy has this crush on a girl, but he's just too choked up to say anything, and the girl is just too oblivious to notice. Dez does have this crush on this mermaid, Suni, and he never does get the courage to admit it, but Suni, clearly knows that Dez does have this crush on her, and is basically just waiting for him to get over his hesitation. Also, if you like Chris McClane from Total Drama, they basically transplanted his character into the show as Neptune King of the Sea.
Whoa, Dez, I see you've joined the Mer Club. Welcome aboard, dude.
They literally got the same voice actor for that exact reason. Fireball Cat is the best character in the show, though, no questions asked. He knows generally how to fix whatever magical problem the cast is dealing with, but he's incredibly snarky about it, and doesn't suffer fools lightly. All in all, the characters are just chill. Whether they're doing something like fighting off an army of zombie gingerbread men, trying to get out of a cursed salad truck, or pulling off a reverse heist, I think that's what really makes the show work. It's comfortable. I know the show looks like it's one that's constantly screaming at you, but it is really full of chill moments. There's definitely stakes, and things do get serious sometimes, but it rarely gets intense. Some of the stories are actually pretty interesting too, especially ones involving this other leprechaun, Finula. You might notice that Dez looks nothing like a leprechaun. He's actually really proud of that, defying stereotypes that are expected of him. In one particular episode, Does This Please the Jigmaster, Finula gets fed up with Dez's unorthodox ways, takes him to a reprogramming facility, and tries to force him to act like a stereotypical leprechaun. This show's a lot deeper than you might imagine. Yes, I'm still talking about Wishfart. As you might imagine, this one didn't last very long either, which is a crying shame because I do think that it's legitimately great. It's just, you know, Wishfart. Titles are important, people. I made a whole video about that. And once again, I know that the art style is not everyone's cup of tea, especially nowadays. In 2017, people were getting more and more hostile towards it. If you want to know the actual technical term, it's called thin line style. And maybe the show could have survived with the art style, but not with both the title and the art style. Like I said, the only reason I took a look at this show in the first place is because it's my job to watch bad cartoons. But sometimes you get very pleasantly surprised. It's one of the things that makes my job very enjoyable. Do you agree with my choices, or are you at least interested in giving some of these shows a try? I know that some of them, Wishfart, are harder sells than others, but I am legitimately curious to those who have seen these shows. What are your opinions as one of the other 5 people on Earth who has actually seen them? And if you don't agree with me and think these shows are garbage, that's your right, but tell me about some of the underrated gems that you think should have been here. I might check them out, and if this video gets 100,000 views, I promise I'll do another one. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, or else Akiko will haunt you. Oh wait, that's a good thing. Like, comment, and subscribe, or Akiko won't haunt you.
She's terrifying!
Ew.
I am signing out.